I knew the body innately heals. It can't not.
A pocket of energy within myself.
This is for your mother. So just do this for her.
Let's figure out ways that we can actually use pleasure to come together and bring healing.
It's a modality where we go into your subconscious and change some of those limiting beliefs.
I'm Susan Marco, clinical hypnotist, and I have so many friends and people who have had big impact on my life. So I want to share them all with you. Well, I'm just turning up my volume here. Hello, everybody. This is Susan Marco, and we're here with Trance Talks. And I actually have the great joy to be sitting with my guest today instead of being on Zoom. So I want to introduce you to this beautiful woman, Amy Zambrano. Amy, I've known since she was little, actually.
That's right.
Her family used to come to the chiropractic office where I worked part-time. And I always knew you were going to do great things.
Oh, thank you.
But when she really started developing and ended up where she is now, it just made my heart. You guys will know when we start talking. I'll introduce Amy this way. She is all things yoga. Amy's got 15 years experience teaching, over 1,700 hours in training. I could go through the laundry list of all of the certifications and the things that she does, but I feel like I would rather start this conversation and let Amy tell you about herself and how it is. How did you come to be this amazing yoga presence?
Thank you. It's a practice and an evolution. I feel like, my students have been my greatest teachers as much as I've had, all these amazing trainings with, top yoga teachers, places around the world, been to every continent except Antarctica doing yoga. But I always find that, when you're connecting, to a child's energy, there's so much that you can learn from them that has, I accredit my success to the students and the children of the world, really.
Yeah,
have brought me to this moment,
So I didn't mention, but Amy actually teaches children yoga, and I'm going to use this wording that you sent me in this write-up, that she pioneered yoga in education. Yeah, talk about that.
So I'm actually the first wellness coach in a public school district in the state of New Jersey. So, yes.
Who's not excited about that?
I mean, it took a lot of, blood, sweat, and tears to come to this position, as I've had my own business for 11 years. And I was an independent contractor with a school district. And, they saw the work that I was doing. And then it wasn't until COVID happened that, really everyone realized the need for social emotional learning and the value of, mental health practices, that, a position opened up. And, the next thing you know, I'm, a full-time employee, and I still have my business as well. But, pioneering yoga in education. And I don't just teach yoga, I'm teaching mindfulness and meditation, and I bring in arts and crafts and music and technology. So it's not just like, let's do a downward dog on the mat. It's like so much more than that. It's what's connecting you to your heart, what's making you feel joy, and learning how to self-regulate, these skills that we might not have been taught when we were younger, that, adults are just like children as well, there's a lot of like inner child work that can also be beneficial when we have that, play like mindset and imagination and creativity. So, when you bring that back to your breath, your breath is your greatest power, that you always have that no matter where you go. You might not have a yoga mat, you might not have all the extra fun materials like crystals and essential oils, but you always have your breath. And also mudras. I love to teach. Mudras are yoga of the hands. So one of my favorite is bringing each finger to your thumb, just like that, as that helps to activate the parasympathetic nervous system of rest and digest. You can add an affirmation, a mantra. So I like to say, I am peaceful, and then connect it, as you're saying it, I am peaceful.
Yeah. So for people who are
Mhm.
not watching, some people might be listening.
Okay.
What she's actually doing is touching the first finger to the thumb, then the second finger, and the third finger, then the pinky finger and back.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
So you're doing that as you're, connecting each finger to your thumb. You can hold, you can pause, you can do it as a moving mudra or meditation, because I find it's hard for even adults to sit still, let alone children. So again, if you're giving them tangible tools to come back to their breath, come back to their heart space with thinking, this positive power, because, our thoughts become the words that we speak, and the words that we speak become our actions. So,
Right.
If you're in a state of anxiety or stress and you come back to, I am peaceful, you'll help to clear out those clouds, as the sun always shines even on a cloudy day. So it's all about how we're, managing our emotions and our thoughts, and knowing that you, again, have all the power from within to do all that. So that's why I do so many different things, because everyone learns differently. There's more visual learners, auditory learners. So I really like to give a well-rounded approach, and to see, what resonates with each student, and to give them the experience and the exposure to see, what feels best for them. And I also don't like to force it, so say we're doing the physical practice of yoga, and I always say, like, you're your greatest teacher from within. Listen to that teacher. So, if if Johnny needs a rest, and you're saying everyone now in, warrior 2, I'm not forcing Johnny to do that warrior 2. Maybe today that Johnny needs a little extra rest, and that's okay. And or maybe there's students that are like, I don't want to do yoga today. There's that resistance as well. But if you're able to give them that space, they'll get curious, and again, yoga is not just the poses, it's finding presence in what brings them joy. So it could be playing football, it could be painting a picture, or on the field hockey team, or whatever, hobby, or maybe it's, spelling bee. So it's really like finding those moments that bring them joy, connect them to their heart center, and that is the yoga. So it might not look like, these traditional yoga poses that everyone thinks, it is. My belief is, you're focusing not just the physical flexibility and balance, you're also targeting that mental flexibility. Can I go with the flow when things don't go my way? So it kind of goes beyond the mat, So that's my perspective and philosophy of how I, teach.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a wonderful life skill, when we find these things as adults, and we say, oh, I wish that I knew this when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I wish somebody could have taught me. So do you have, are you on the curriculum as a class itself, or is it extracurricular, or how do they do it?
So in the district that I work with all 12 buildings, and it just depends on the need of the building. So it could be me in a small group, it could be a whole group. It just really depends on the need of the school. However, I do a weekly Wellness Wednesday Zoom show every Wednesday at 8 a.m. It started as like a 10-minute little thing, but now it's evolved into about 20-25 minutes.
How cool.
Yeah. So it's a Zoom like yours.
Wellness Wednesday.
Wellness Wednesday. And I always have a theme of the month. So it could be trust or respect, mudra of the month. And then each week we learn different skills. We have special guests as the students, because I always like to have the students as the teachers too, that peer-to-peer learning. So because I work district-wide, sometimes I have high school students that want to either pre-record something or come on live, they'll get approval to be my special guest as well. I do a whole March Madness mindfulness challenge, because I've learned a lot of tech tools that the schools use. So then the teachers, can add on some SEL in the lesson with something they're already doing. So it's not adding to their plate. It's just like, oh, here, you're using this app. Look what I've, done with it and can support you. For example, they could record a meditation, whether they're making a video or an audio. So they're hearing themselves, for a brain break or to pause. It could be their favorite book because, reading is a form of meditation. So it doesn't have to be, an official meditation script. It could be their favorite book that, and then they're practicing that literacy, and that listening as well. So
what's really interesting about that is that they, like, the top hypnosis teachers will tell you that there's nothing more hypnotizable than the sound of your own voice.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Like, if you think about that's the voice that we hear in our head.
Okay.
So when you take that and you put it, into a recorded format, it's very powerful.
Oh, I didn't know that. So that's cool. Very, very cool. So things like that. So I'll offer different activities that, they can do on the Zoom, and then they'll send it to me, and then, in time for the following Zoom show. So then they'll see their work on screen, and it's become a really special way to connect, district wide. On our Wellness Wednesday Zoom. So that's like one, thing that, we do consistently.
Sure.
But there's so many grade levels and so many ways to connect with the students, whether it be with the singing bowls to do like a sound bath, or
so they let you bring the sound bowls.
You bring the
singing bowls into the school.
Yeah, I have my one trusty brass bowl because it's sturdy and it has a nice low tone, because that's another thing too. Things break. But I have the crystal bowls as well. But I always have my one set singing bowl that I always bring with me. The Ting Sha chimes. So I'll do that. I'll do coloring meditations. I like to call it heart work than artwork and heart, because coloring can be really soothing, where they can color their breath, they can close their eyes. I've done watercolor breath, where they'll put a drop of the water and the color on a paper and then blow on it. And then it almost looks like fireworks. So then they're like, again, a visual of their breath. Like, what does my breath look like? And I love to connect it with the chakras, with, calling it our inner rainbow superpower. So you're, respecting the culture of yoga, as well as, meeting, the needs of a school without making it religious per se. But there's ways that, you can integrate the authentic practice, because that's something that's pretty important to me, is keeping it authentic and true to its nature. So with your root chakra, you're coloring in red, like, I feel strong, I feel grounded. So there's so much you can do with the arts and craft aspect of connecting with the body and the mind.
So beautiful, I think, because it allows you to express your creativity at the same time.
Definitely.
Like how she is right now, like when you see like this beautiful face, she's always joyful. This woman, always joyful.
Thank you. And what's so interesting too is that, like, I come up with all these different ideas, and I can do the same exact lesson the whole day, and it's always going to be different with every group of student or individual student. So that I always find so interesting, because, it's like one of those things where you have a plan, but the biggest plan is to let go of exactly, what I think is going to happen, and to leave that space for what shows up, and, to allow that flow, to happen and to express, themselves. So it's always interesting, no matter like how many times I'll do something, it always changes. So I literally learn too as I'm going, because sometimes in your mind you have an expectation, like, all right, it's going to happen like this. And then, especially with children, you have to be so flexible. Flexible and open-minded,
but that's so beautiful, because you're modeling it. Right? Like, you're teaching yoga by being yoga.
Yes, exactly.
And, that's like, I think back to the teachers that I had, and like, there were certain teachers or people in my life who I really wanted to emulate.
Yes.
Definitely. And, when you have that kind of potential, right, to have that kind of influence, over a kid. I think it's so important. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
for sure. Because you think back to, your own teachers that you've had, even if they're not a yoga teacher, and what that meant to you, So, so it's one of those practices that always humbles me, and I have so much gratitude for, my teachers that I had, when I was in school, as well as, my greatest teachers, as I like to call my students and everyone. So.
And you also, in your little blurb you sent me, you work with neurodivergent
I do.
communities as well.
I do. And, they are so amazing. And, I don't teach it any differently, but just, you modify things. But I don't see it as like neurodivergent. I just see them, as a person. So I find it helps them so much with self-regulation, because it supports their the proprioception and the vestibular system. And again, everyone learns differently. So I love practicing restorative yoga with the neurodiverse populations, because it's so soothing to their nervous system with the prop. So if you're not familiar with restorative yoga, you're holding the postures longer, but with support. So you're on a bolster, a big pillow, the eye pillow,
Rocks.
it's so it's a slower practice, but there's so many benefits in the pause, where you're getting that rest, because we live in our sympathetic nervous system of fight or flight. We're constantly on the go, our mind is going, that we forget to rest. And when we actually take that moment to pause and rest, we can actually do more. So I like to say, when your brain can rest, you can do your best. So a little rhyme there. But also teaching them to give themselves permission to stop and slow down, because I feel like we're in such a culture that's like go, 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 instant with technology and social media and everything, that we don't actually take time for ourselves, for that self-care piece. And like also learning that like self-care doesn't have to be, this expensive, get my nails done or this and that. It can actually just be taking a moment to take a nap, or, feet up the wall is really good, for the nervous system. So just, bringing them these tangible tools that just can support them to be their healthy self, no matter what type of learner they are, that yoga meets you where you are. So it doesn't matter what, if you're flexible and you can touch your toes or stand on your head, like it's really not about that. It's really, am I being kind to myself, more than anything, and just that grace. And, even as you age, you might not be able to touch your toes anymore, and having that acceptance of, yoga meets you where you are. So it, I find it grounds you. As
I used to have a hard time with that, because I am not in a flexible body in this lifetime. Like, no,
and that's okay.
But it, when the first teacher I found who, like, I felt safe to be, in that space and to let go. I forgot where I was going with that, but sorry about that buzzing. I completely lost my train of thought. Don't you love when that happens?
You take a pause.
Take a pause. Yeah, like really being met in that space and sort of, I don't know, allowed to be who I was.
Yes. Yeah.
And I remember this. So there was one of the classes he did hatha yoga, so it was very slow and very, very meditative.
Yeah.
And the girl who was next to me, we were doing some kind of a move where, legs open, like in a split.
Okay.
Maybe one leg in, and then lean down and touch your chest to the floor.
Oh, okay.
Was not going to happen for me. And she was next to me, and this girl was incredibly flexible, like very tall, lean, like, and she went to lean forward, and she went, oh. And I said, is this hard for you? And she said, Yeah. And I said, oh, thank God.
Yeah. Yeah. And then that's the thing too, like your body changes every day. So, what you could do one day, you might not be able to do tomorrow.
That's a good
And
point.
just again, giving yourself grace of, meeting yourself where you are. And that's, the true practice of yoga. It's the union, the yoke, that brings you to that moment of, so what if I can't, reach for my toes, but I'm breathing, I'm, still here.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but was yoga originally intended to allow us to be flexible, like to just be in our bodies and relax in a way so that we could be in meditation for long periods of time?
So yeah, so the postures were designed for the meditation, the seat. But it was also all designed just for men too. So I think people forget that, women's bodies are different, so like keeping that in mind too, that, and, there's so many styles of yoga as well these days. So, it's like, what brings you to your mat, whether it be a hatha practice or kundalini or, restorative. I know hot yoga has become really popular. Not the best because you injure yourself more, but I always say, what brings you to your mat, if that's going to create that physical practice for you, so you are ready to meditate. But just, it could be going for a walk. It doesn't have to be yoga poses. Again, for that, mental clarity for meditation, it could be cooking. It could be something that brings, you joy. So it's not a one size fits all. And I think even with meditation, a lot of times people think like, okay, I have to be in a seat and not think of anything. And that's actually not really, meditating. It's, being with the breath and like, okay, I'm thinking that, like, letting your thoughts go, almost like clouds, and not getting attached to the thought that's on there. Just, there goes, where I feel like a lot of people, always think it has to be like, emptiness. And
I don't think it's possible.
I don't think so either.
We're not made to not
We're
think.
human.
Like, we're not thinking for a reason. The trick is learning how to not be attached to that, right? In a way of, just like you say, like a cloud, just letting it come and go. And
yes, and just the breath work too is so important, of, just by taking that deep breath activates the parasympathetic nervous system of rest and digest. And when you're taking that, full belly breath, that's when the calm is going to happen. Otherwise, you're in that flutter state and you can't think clearly, your heart's racing, that it, makes it harder to, find that focal point of meditation. So, guided meditations are great, or again, listening to music, or just listening to nature too. There's so much we can learn from just listening to the birds, or just like noticing, because, a lot of times too, everyone's looking down on their phones these days. They're not fully being present. So, if you think of yourself like a battery, a cell phone battery, when your battery gets low, you start to freak out, like, where's my charger? And if we remind ourselves that we need to recharge, we need to disconnect from technology to reconnect to ourselves, maybe that pause will be inspiring to, practice meditation, or just those quiet moments of self-reflection, or, again, that self-care that, might not seem as scary, like sitting and meditating. And because a lot of times, people are just afraid to be with their thoughts. I think it's that resistance. So again, if you meet that resistance with that kindness and that care, that feeling of, hesitation, it might start to, slow down. But it's a practice. So you just have to, like, keep sitting, if that's what you're practicing, because don't give up on yourself. I feel like that's the one thing, with meditation, is it's a practice. So every day is going to be different. There's no yoga perfect. It's, it's always a practice. You're always coming back to your mat. You're always coming back to the breath,
So you do, so just real quick, you do work with one-to-one, or you work with
I
people
do.
independently of
Yeah.
your school obligations,
I
right?
do, yes. I still have my business.
Yeah.
So with that, I do, privates and birthday parties or workshops or, things like
Beautiful.
that as I have over 1,700 hours of training from yoga to meditation, Ayurveda, reflexology, crystal healing, Reiki. There's so much. But what I love to learn, because not only does it help myself, but I'm always looking to see what will help my students. So I like to learn so many different modalities and then translate it to see like, oh, for example, I love crystals, right? So you could hold, that rose quartz as a breathing tool. You could put it on your belly and notice how your belly goes up and down when you take that deep breath. So, using these tools to support yourself and your students, but it has to be authentic to you, that like, oh, I love, this oil. Let me try it, or have them smell it.
Right.
Like that it then makes them more curious. And it's like my bag of tricks of all the different things that, I use to connect with.
Yeah.
So
I love it. I love what you do. I love everything about you.
Thank you.
So it'll be in the show notes, but just quick, if people want to reach out to you, what's the best way for them?
If you go to my website, amyzambranoyoga.com, or you can find me on Instagram or Twitter at Amy Zambrano Yoga. You can reach out to me that way. My email is amyzambranoyoga@gmail.com. So those are the best ways to connect. And, I always like to post inspiring, tools and tips to, again, help yourself be the best you can, so.
Yeah, follow her. Follow her wherever she goes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking the time to come here and sit with me and have this conversation.
Yeah, this is great.
See you soon. All right, bye. See you, everybody.